Rookie minicamp has wrapped up, so we give you some of the biggest takeaways from our first glance of the 2026 Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into the Locked On Bucs podcast. I am your host, James Yarcho, joined by Evan Plosky of 10 Tampa Bay. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. We are going to talk about Zac Robinson speaking with the media, and we bust out Plosky's crystal ball ahead of the schedule release. But we're kicking things off today with some takeaways from rookie minicamp. Now, I gave some thoughts about some of the members of the Bucs rookie class on yesterday's episode. But Evan, I'm curious to hear what some of your big takeaways were from not just the practices, because, you know, there's only so much that you're going to be able to gain from shorts and helmets, but, you know, some of the things that we heard from coaches and players throughout minicamp.
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that Rueben Bain Jr. looked as advertised, just with the way that Todd Bowles spoke about him, saying that he was in, you know, kind of mid-season form, just, you know, with the way that all the coaches have kind of gushed about him. I think that just hearing good reports and these guys being like, yeah, he looks exactly how we thought he was going to look. He looks great. I think that's good news. You know, we're hearing, you know, and certainly we're going to talk about some of the offensive interviews that happened this week. But, you know, Ted Hurst looks the part. It does seem like there's a little bit of a learning curve there, which we expected. So that's not a surprise. And then also, you know, Josiah Trotter feeling like, you know, when you look at him, his body, I mean, that's a big boy. So I am typically of the I always say this every year when it comes down to this stuff. I don't like to overanalyze it. Once we get into OTAs and you start having some of the veterans in there during the voluntary portions of stuff, we can start sniffing around and understanding a little bit here and there of what this group looks like. You know, you go back to the beginning of OTAs last year when we told y'all this team is going to have more interceptions. They certainly entered the season that way, right? There was a different level of intentionality getting picks. So that's what I mean. Like, we'll have a better sense of this group once we get into the OTA portions of things and have a little bit more of a report. But for me, it's simply that Rueben Bain Jr. is as advertised, and we're really excited to see him get going.
Yeah, I was certainly impressed with what we saw, what we heard. Obviously, a lot of praise from Todd Bowles. One of the things that I had kind of zeroed in on, and it's a conversation, Evan, that we're probably going to have for the next 3 months. But it was unfortunate that Keontae Scott could not participate in the minicamp. He had the wrist procedure so that he would be ready to go. Part two, yeah. So that he would be ready to go for training camp. But, you know, Todd Bowles speaking about Scott and the kind of impact that he can make and wanting to have him on the field. Well, he's a nickel corner. You have Jacob Parrish. Do you start to get the sense that the cornerback competition that we were all hoping with a draft pick or a free agency for outside corner to replace Jamel Dean, do you feel like that's going to be kind of a three-man race now between McCollum, Morrison, and Parrish, and Scott is going to find his way into that slot corner position?
Or we're going to see 6 DBs on the field. Isn't that going to be some fun, right? That
was
you know, you talk about the genetic makeup of this team in the offseason and what have they done, right? They added Robinson. You already had, right? Hopefully there's a full season of Kansas. We're crossing our fingers there. You add Capehart. Now Rueben Bain Jr. is added. Keontae Scott is added. Josiah Trotter is added. It smells like a team that wants to fix some of the rushing defense and the issues they had last year with this group regarding that. It was one of the worst rushing defenses we have seen under Todd Bowles here in Tampa Bay. So if you're stacked up front, everyone's healthy, you can run 6 DBs out there and maybe try to parlay some of the ways that Seattle was so successful on defense and be multiple in that regard. So I think that's part of it, right? I certainly think you need to feel it out and see how Parrish can do on the outside and challenging guys like Morrison and Zion and, pushing them because, they need to prove it again entering this season, certainly. But, yeah, I think it's multifaceted. I think he's going to be on the field. Right now at a foundational level, he should fulfill the Christian Izien role. And then there could be something more beautiful on top of that. And that's part of what OTAs is going to teach us a little bit. But I don't necessarily think that this means that Parrish is getting fully shifted to the outside. We're going to see some of that. Certainly some cross-training that's going to happen if injuries happen. But, I think we're going to have a little bit more fun defensively this season watching what Todd Bowles is cooking up.
Yeah, certainly hope so. And I don't know, throwing 6 defensive backs out there on the field at once, that may alleviate some of the, I don't want to say stresses, the concerns from Bucs fans about linebackers that may or may not potentially be able to cover, because obviously that's been the big knock on Trotter.
Look, Anzalone can cover, right? What I want to tell people is it's looking a little bit like a 2020 formula when you had Levante David, who handled more of those things, and then you had Devin White or Josiah Trotter, who was more of the thumper, the downhill guy. You send him on blitzes, and that's really kind of how you have to look at this team is go back into the good Devin White days of when he was, in his first few years with the team. That's kind of how I see Josiah Trotter. And now you've added Anzalone, who can certainly do a lot more in coverage from a linebacker, which we haven't seen since, probably Levante David was still, at, I would say probably a few years ago, Levante David.
Well, and one other thing that I had mentioned, and I'm curious to get your thoughts. Again, reserve the right to change our minds because, as you said,
that's right.
We need to get to OTAs. We need to get to training camp. We need to see how some of this plays out. But I feel like we're in a situation where it's going to be really, really hard for Josiah Trotter to not be the week 1 starter in there with Anzalone.
Yeah. No, I agree. You drafted him in the 2nd round to play right away. If he's not out there week 1, then I have to imagine he's going to at least be part of some packages where you have maybe Servassier in early downs, Josiah on later downs. But eventually, that's the guy. We can see how he progresses throughout training camp and whatnot, but I expect him to have a big role this season, just like Rueben Bain Jr. And then everybody else beyond that could be rotational. Still have an impact, but fairly rotate, once you kind of get to the later round picks, the 5th and the 6th round, now we're talking about dudes who are getting onto the field likely because of injury versus rotational. I would say 3rd and 4th round rotational, 1st and 2nd, we need you to play a lot of snaps.
All right, well, we have talked plenty about the defense. It's time to switch gears because offensive coordinator Zac Robinson spent a lot of the time with the media on Tuesday. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster, and they boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role. That makes the real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with me and other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonbucs.supercast.com. Zac Robinson and plenty of the other offensive coaches spoke.
7 others to be exact.
Yeah. Also, real quick, before we dive into this, should the Buccaneers and Bucs fans be offended that there's a certain coach that has decided to retire from the NFL but now joins Iowa?
Not when it's your alma mater. No, shout out to Tom Moore. Nearly 70 years after playing for the Iowa Hawkeyes, he's going to be an offensive senior consultant for the Hawkeyes. So, look, he said he wants to go boots up on the field, and that's what it looks like he's going to be doing
at this point.
And look, they need it. They need his mind there in Iowa City.
If you're listening to this podcast and you happen to be an Iowa fan, and you are one of the people on Twitter roasting this move and saying how stupid it was, you have no idea what you just got in Tom Moore. That's probably the best thing that Iowa football has done since Tristan Wirfs. So, you'll be happy about that. But, Zac Robinson, 7 of the other offensive coaches spoke with the media on Tuesday, but Robinson had plenty to say about everything from rookie receiver Ted Hurst and what he brings to the team, not having a true X receiver, Baker Mayfield being hungry, new running back Kenneth Gainwell. But Evan, what kind of stood out to you the most regarding all of the things that Robinson said? I think he spoke for like 20 minutes, which is relatively long.
Yeah, close to 20 minutes. First off, he mentioned that, look, it's very helpful to have a true X. Certainly don't have that with Mike Evans anymore, but Ted Hurst is a guy who they believe in, and it's going to take a little bit of time for him, but they think that, if they can build in some packages for him, even beyond the red zone stuff, and, work him into the mix, I should say, then we'll see, he'll be helpful. But, he talked about the versatility of the wide receivers. Emeka Egbuka is going to be primarily the Z. Everyone can play anything, yada, yada, yada. But it's really just going to be sort of the sum of the parts deal here, where you're going to need all 3 wide receivers, Cade Otton, running backs helping out, and figuring out who the hot hand is that day and working plays to them. We can only go off of words right now. We don't have anything to see. They're still kind of figuring out what this offense is going to look like, per se, and we're still very much into the testing phase of everything. I think we heard from coaches out there they're going to try some things during OTAs, and right now with the light workouts, you figure it out now so that when you're into training camp, you're kind of crystallizing what this offense is going to do and its strengths. But, I think that we don't necessarily know what the offense is going to look like, but we do envision Emeka, Jalen, Godwin to really be your 3 keys there and work around them with your other parts.
Yeah, he certainly had a lot of praise for Jalen McMillan. As far as some of the comments that Zac Robinson made, I'm having a hard time deciphering if he's more excited about all of the weapons that he has on the team or having Chandler Whitmer as the quarterback's coach, because he was stoked to talk about being reunited with Whitmer.
Yeah, and I do want to mention here, just because quickly I have it on my notes and forgot about it, is that, Bucky hasn't been on the field. Zac Robinson told us that. So he's still nursing his injury. I don't know if he'll be out there for voluntary OTAs or even the mandatory portion. We do expect him to be just fine for training camp. We've heard murmurs of this earlier in the offseason, but again, getting validation from Zac earlier today, or early when he spoke. Now, with Whitmer, yes, he said that when he left for Indiana, that one hurt a little bit, but obviously a great opportunity for him. And Whitmer, even though he's a very similar age to Baker, says that Baker has been on Whitmer to A, coach him hard, and B, focus on his footwork. He said that's the main thing with Baker right now that they're working on is footwork for him. But, between, factor in Yates, Robinson, Campese, this is a core group of guys that's a core four that's coming over really from the Atlanta side of things, sort of the Zac Robinson bubble here. And then you kind of have the other four guys that are holdovers from previous years. So you're kind of getting a mishmash of what was and what will be, which to me I think is a good thing because you have new eyes and old eyes, and that should work together to create something really nicely.
Yeah, and to circle back to your comment about Bucky Irving, obviously, Jason Light and Todd Bowles both told everybody at the Combine that they expect every player to be ready to go for training camp. So I wouldn't stress too much about the Bucky Irving thing, but that probably is why Zac Robinson spent so much time talking about Kenneth Gainwell and what he's going to be able to bring to the team. And I think it's just going to add an extra wrinkle that you didn't really get last year. Like you had the two running back system, but Gainwell just, he's an upgrade at every level than Rachaad White was. And Robinson seems like he is not going to be shy about utilizing him this year.
No. And, I've always said it'd be nice to have some more 21 personnel, and that's still very much possible. But the more and more I hear these coaches speak, the more and more it does feel like that maybe there is a little bit of a worry of Bucky long-term and more so injury-wise, and if he can hold up. And they wanted to get somebody who is very similar to Bucky and that you can put him right in and the offense can still function the same way if Bucky were to be taken out of the mix. There was a statement by Zac Robinson made that sometimes you got to save, Bucky from Bucky a little bit of amount of usage and whatnot. Though, he said, look, then all of a sudden you give him 25 carries, 104, 140 yards. I forget exactly what he said, and you're like, man, we needed all those yards. But it does sniff like maybe we got to scale him back a bit and work him interchangeably a bit more with a guy like Gainwell, because now the offense, you don't have to, like, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, and Sean Tucker were three very different running backs, in my opinion, and what their strengths were. With Bucky and Kenneth, it's kind of the same. And then, of course, you have Sean Tucker, who probably is going to be more of a red zone, goal line type of guy. And then Zac mentioned the gap stuff that he really likes seeing from Tucker. But Skip Pete also said that Gainwell reminds him of Tony Pollard when he coached him in Dallas. So yeah. I think that I'm very curious to see how they're working together once we get to training camp. I don't think we're going to see much of that during OTAs, especially during the voluntary portion of things. But it's something to keep an eye on if Zac Robinson is a guy who's watching a ton of Rams film, sees that, hey, Kyron Williams and Blake Corum are essentially swapping every other drive. Is that going to be the way that the Buccaneers do their business?
Yeah, and I've been on record as saying I think that this is going to be much closer to a 50-50 split between those two than it's been with Bucky and Rachaad, especially early on last year. And Bucky just got run into the ground. Yeah. So lots and lots of things to be keeping an eye on, just like Evan is keeping an eye on that crystal ball, because it is redemption time. That is coming up.
We're not for redemption. I got a long way to go to build off of last year.
Oh, no. It's redemption for the crystal ball, not for
you. Yeah. Oh,
this is on the ball. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. We can stream anything, order food in minutes, do everything from our phones, and somehow buying tickets to live events still feels way harder than it should be. Long lines, confusing checkout, prices jumping at the last second. It shouldn't be that complicated. That's why there's Game Time. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets fast and simple. You guys know I have used Game Time for sporting events and concerts. It's always the first place I look when my sons want to go to a game or they want to go to a concert. And the best part is how easy they make everything. What I see is what I pay. So there are no surprises when I get to checkout. We can get a view from our seats right there on the app so we know exactly what to expect when we get to the venue. And they constantly have zone deals for even bigger savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and the crystal ball let us down heading into free agency. It lied to you, Evan, so it's time for some redemption here as we prepare for the schedule to be released on Thursday night. And yes, we will go live on this show Thursday to react to the schedule. Make sure that you have those YouTube notifications turned on so you can jump in and join into the reaction and the live chat. But Evan, let's go ahead and look into that crystal ball and see if we get any answers as to what the Buccaneers schedule may look like. And we're going to start with who the Buccaneers Week 1 opponent is going to be.
So we know they're going to be on the road because of, I think, the Bruno Mars concert. So last year we saw the Buccaneers go on the road, divisional game, take on Atlanta. I don't think it's going to be Atlanta this year. I think they're going to go on the road, and they're going to take on the New Orleans Saints.
Okay.
And kind of a throwback to that crazy Fitzmagic game we had where it was like 50-something to 40-something, which was also a Week 1 contest back in the day. So I think it's going to be another NFC South game on the road, just a different opponent. I'm going with the Saints.
All right, I'll take that. I'm hoping that they're just not going to be playing in Cincinnati in like December. I would prefer it to not be freezing when I go down there, but
that would be nice.
It doesn't need to be Week 1 either, because Ohio in September, pretty much the same thing as Florida in September. It gets pretty brutal. All right, so you're opening with a division opponent. We know they're going to close with a division opponent. So which divisional team are they going to face in Week 18 when hopefully they've already locked up the division and clinched their playoff spot?
Yeah, I think that we've seen it a handful of times now. Bucs, Panthers, end of season, feels like that's what we're going to see again, just going off of history. Those two teams seem to meet up at the end of the year a bunch of times. So I'm going to stick with Carolina in that slot.
But call your shot. Is it going to be at Ray J or is it going to be in Carolina?
Week 18 at Carolina. We'll flip it from what last year was.
So we're bookending this season with road divisional games. I like it. All right. Well, we know that the Bucs are not going to be facing Cincinnati or Atlanta in Germany, since they're going to be facing each other out there. So at least there's that. But we all know what's going to happen as soon as the schedule drops. All the eyes immediately go to see where are the primetime slots. Now, I dread primetime slots because personally, it keeps me up way too late. It screws up my life.
I thought you were going to talk about the team's record on it.
Well, that's where Bucs fans dread it, because the Bucs have not had the best of luck in primetime over the last couple of years. So an 8-9 team didn't make the playoffs. How many primetime games do you think the Bucs are going to have, and who do you think they're going to face in those games?
I think they're going to have 2 primetime games. One's going to be a Thursday night football game. Then I'll say one of those early-ish season doubleheaders that the Bucs have been attached to before. Kind of week 2, week 5. It's there are 2 Monday Night Football games, or whatever it might be. But I do think
I don't mind. I think the earlier kickoffs for the primetime games.
So 2 primetime games, but I'm going to say 3 standalone games because I think they're going to play Detroit in Germany.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that would throw a wrench into my plans to potentially go to the game in Detroit as well as the game in Cincinnati. But you're calling Lions in Germany, and then who are?
I guess Lions in Germany week 10. I guess so I can name the week.
And then who are your 2 primetime opponents?
Ooh. Ravens, because they always seem to play the Ravens on Thursday Night Football.
Well, the game that everyone hates talking about, where both Mike and Chris went down, that was a Monday night game.
You're right. Sorry, they did a Monday night game, and then it was Monday night in Ray J. That's when Mike went down. The other one where Shaq went down was a Thursday Night Football game.
Yes,
you're correct about that. But I'll go with Ravens, and my other game. Screw it. I'll go with Cowboys because they're always on primetime.
Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and slot that one in for Sunday Night Football.
Last time they played Dallas in Dallas. It was a Sunday Night Football game. They opened up the 2021 season Monday night, that was the first game of the season. They opened up primetime Dallas. Then they also played in the 2022 season, week 1, I think Sunday Night Football in Dallas. So they always attach the Buccaneers and Cowboys to primetime games. So I'll go with that. I'll go with Dallas and Baltimore, just rolling back my historical references and see if they just repeat themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it just gives the NFL and NBC another excuse to put Dallas in prime time. So we're already opening with Dallas in prime time against the Giants, I believe, is the Sunday night game of week 1.
Dallas is going to be on prime time regardless of how bad they are.
Yeah,
they're going to be on. They get eyeballs. They get eyeballs. It is what it is.
It's unfortunate, is what it is. All right. Anything else that the crystal ball is telling you here about the schedule release? Anything wacky? Anything interesting? Do you have any other messages to send along from the crystal ball that lies to us?
I will say, I think we're sniffing a week 7 or shorter, like bye week 4 through week 7, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of have that feeling as well.
It's either that or it's going to be the bye week at like the very end. Like my
fantasy playoff bye week that screws everybody up.
Yeah, that random one. So I guess my prediction is going to be they're not going to have the middle of the season bye week, right? We're not talking. I'll say week 7, 8, 9, 10. No bye week there.
Okay. All right. And then I do have one other question for the crystal ball that is not schedule related, but I need clarification on this. At what point will it be appropriate to start referring to Raymond James Stadium as the House of Bain?
Let's have him do something first, and then let's talk.
Okay,
we have the House of Bain. Then we have the Tampa Bay chant being Tampa Bain. So we got some things in the hopper, but you gotta put some things together here, right? Bucky Irving didn't get a Bucky chant until he started doing some things. So let's have the reality meet the hype, and then I'm up for all suggestions.
I'm just saying it would be pretty hilarious. Every time he gets to the sack, you play jump around and you start calling Ray J the House of Bain. I'm just throwing things out there. Little fan interaction here. Evan, what do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay News app?
Well, we're going to do a story near the end of this week on Brooke Bennett, one of our wonderful Olympians from the Tampa Bay area, who is going to be doing an Ironman this weekend in Jacksonville. So I have a story coming out on that. You can find that on the 10 Tampa Bay News app. And we're also talking about the Tampa Bay Rays, who are the hottest team in baseball. Such a fun squad to just witness as they are taking dubs night after night and trying to stack these wins in hopes of putting them in the bank for when a slump inevitably comes. But yeah, I mean we're covering that all the way through. So and then also hit me up at eCloskey WTSP on the X. Love interacting with you as long as you're respectful.
Yeah, you got to do that. I'm not, but I get a pass.
You get a pass. You get a pass. It's but the thing is, I also am not so respectful to you back. So there's a good give and take here.
Exactly. That is the rapport that we have built over the years of doing this.
Yes, a foundation of friendship based on no respect for one another.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not making fun of each other, are you even really friends?
That's what it really comes down to. Yeah.
100%. All right, make sure you're checking all of that out. Make sure that you're following on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. Subscribe on YouTube with the notifications turned on so you know when we go live Thursday night. You can join us for the schedule reaction. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Join the Everydayer Club. Go to lockedonbucs.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes if you want to support the show, but you don't want to join the Everydayer Club. It's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.